Welcome to Calming Bedtime Historian channel. Tonight we step into a quiet, frozen world where survival depends on patience, small choices, and the fragile shelter of a wooden wagon. Could you endure a single night trapped in bitter cold with nothing but canvas blankets and your own steady breath to keep you warm? Or would the silence and frost slowly wear you down before morning ever arrives? So before you settle into the story, take a second to like the video and hit subscribe. And if you feel like sharing, let me know where you are in the world and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights. You arrive just as the last colour fades from the sky. The prairie stretches around you in every direction, flat and open with no trees to soften the horizon. The light does not disappear all at once. Instead, it drains slowly like warmth, leaving your hands after you remove your gloves. The air already feels sharper than it did an hour ago, carrying a dryness that settles quietly against your skin. You step down from the wagon with care, your boots pressing into ground that feels firm and unyielding. There is no softness here, no gentle cushion of soil. The earth holds the cold and it gives nothing back. When you breathe in, the air feels thin and clean, but it stings slightly at the back of your throat. You notice it immediately. The cold is not loud. It does not rush toward you with urgency. It waits. It lingers in the background, patient and steady as if it knows time is on its side. Behind you, the covered wagon stands in stillness, its wooden frame outlined faintly against the fading light. The canvas top sags slightly between its curved supports, worn from travel and weather. It looks sturdy at a distance, but up close, you can see the small imperfections, tiny gaps where the fabric does not sit perfectly against the frame, edges where wind could slip through without effort. It will have to be enough. You place your hand against the side of the wagon, feeling the cold already settled into the wood. It has been absorbing the chill for hours, perhaps longer. When your fingers rest there even briefly, you sense how little resistance it offers. This structure, which has carried people across vast distances, is not built to hold warmth. It is built to move. A faint sound drifts across the open land. At first you are not sure what it is. Then you realize it is the wind, still distant, brushing lightly across the prairie. It does not howl. It does not rush. It moves gently, almost quietly, as if testing the space before committing itself fully to the night. You turn your attention to the sky. The last line of light along the horizon fades into a pale grey, then into something deeper. The stars begin to appear one by one, faint at first, then brighter as the darkness settles. Without clouds to hold heat, the temperature will drop quickly. This is something travellers have long understood, even without scientific explanation. Many emigrants crossing the American frontier in the 19th century learned that clear skies often meant colder nights than overcast ones. The absence of cloud cover allowed heat to escape freely into the atmosphere, leaving the ground and everything on it exposed to the full weight of the night air. You feel it beginning now. You climb back into the wagon, lifting the edge of the canvas and stepping inside. The interior is dim, lit only by the last traces of evening slipping through the fabric. It smells faintly of woodcloth and the lingering traces of food and travel. There is a quiet familiarity to it, as though this small space has already learned the shape of your presence. You sit down carefully. The wooden base beneath you feels firm and cold, though slightly less harsh than the ground outside. You reach for a blanket, pulling it around your shoulders, and notice how stiff it has become. The fabric has absorbed the chill, holding it close until your own warmth can slowly begin to push it back. It takes time. You shift slightly, adjusting your position to conserve as much heat as possible. Every movement feels deliberate, not rushed, not careless, just measured. This is how survival begins, not with dramatic action, but with quiet attention to small details. Outside, the sound of the wind grows a little stronger. It brushes against the canvas, now creating a soft, uneven rustle. The fabric moves slightly with each passing gust, rising and settling again. It is not enough to shake the wagon, but it is enough to remind you that the barrier between you and the open prairie is thin, very thin. You listen closely. There are other sounds, now faint but present. A creak from the wagon frame as the wood shifts with the temperature change. A distant movement that might be an animal, or perhaps just the wind moving unevenly across the ground. The prairie does not fall silent at night. It simply changes its voice. You draw the blanket tighter around yourself. The warmth does not come immediately. It builds slowly, held close to your body, forming a small pocket of comfort that you guard carefully. You understand now that heat is not something you generate easily in this environment. It is something you protect. A curious detail from historical accounts suggests that some travelers would sleep in close groups even when space was limited simply to share body heat through the night. Personal comfort became less important than collective survival, especially during colder seasons when temperatures could drop far below freezing. You can see why. Even alone, you feel the need to reduce space around you to create a smaller area that your body can warm more effectively. You tuck your legs in, slightly lowering your shoulders, allowing the blanket to cover as much of you as possible. Every inch matters. The air inside the wagon begins to change. With each breath, you release a small amount of warmth, a hint of moisture. Over time, it lingers, creating a subtle difference between inside and outside. It is not much, but it is noticeable. Enough to remind you that even here in such a fragile shelter, there is a difference between exposure and protection. You pause for a moment. You listen again. The wind continues its slow movement across the prairie, no longer distant, no longer testing. It has arrived fully now, pressing gently against the wagon, searching for openings. It does not rush in all at once. It seeps. It finds the smallest weaknesses. Historians have debated how prepared most travelers truly were for nights like this. Some accounts suggest that many underestimated the cold, relying on general expectations rather than direct experience. Others argue that repeated exposure quickly taught emigrants to adapt, even if those lessons came at a cost. You wonder which would have been true for you. The darkness deepens further. The shapes inside the wagon become less defined, fading into shadow. The world outside disappears almost entirely, leaving only the sound of wind and the faint sense of open space beyond the canvas. Time begins to feel different here, less tied to movement and more to sensation. You settle in, not fully comfortable, not fully at ease, but steady. Your breath slow. Doze. Your hands remain close to your body, tucked beneath the blanket. Your shoulders relax slightly, though not completely. There is still awareness in your posture, a quiet readiness that does not fade entirely. The cold does not allow full rest. It asks for attention even in stillness. You close your eyes briefly, then open them again. The night has only just begun, and already you understand something important. Survival here is not about strength or speed. It is about patience, about noticing small changes, about holding on to warmth in whatever way you can. You shift once more, settling into a position that feels sustainable, not perfect. The wagon creaks softly as you move, then returns to stillness. Outside, the wind continues its quiet work, moving steadily across the frozen land. You remain where you are, listening, breathing, waiting. The long night stretches ahead. You remain still for a while, letting your breathing settle into a slow, steady rhythm. The wagon holds its shape around you, a curved shell of wood and canvas that feels both protective and uncertain at the same time. In the fading awareness of your eyes, the interior becomes more about sensation than sight. You begin to notice how the air rests against your face, how the fabric of the blanket presses lightly against your neck, how each breath leaves a faint trace of warmth that quickly fades. It is a fragile refuge. You reach out and touch the inside of the canvas above you. The surface feels stiff, slightly rough, and colder than you expect. It does not trap heat the way a solid wall might. Instead, it seems to carry the temperature from outside directly inward, offering only a slight delay rather than true insulation. When your fingers linger there for more than a moment, you feel the chill sink deeper into your skin. You pull your hand back instinctively. It is enough to understand. Covered wagons, often called prairie schooners, were designed for movement, not comfort. Their lightweight frames made them easier to pull across long distances, especially over uneven terrain. But that same design meant they offered limited protection against extreme weather, particularly cold winds that could slip through seams and under edges without much resistance. You shift slightly again, adjusting the blanket more tightly around your shoulders. Every small gap matters now. Even the space near your collarbone feels significant, as though the cold could find it without effort. You tuck the edge of the fabric inward, pressing it gently against your body. It's not perfect, but it reduces the feeling of exposure. The wagon creaks softly. The sound is subtle, almost rhythmic, as the wood responds to the changing temperature. It expands and contracts in ways you cannot see, only hear. Each faint movement reminds you that this structure, though sturdy in its purpose, is not rigid. It lives with the environment around it. Outside, the wind brushes more firmly against the canvas. You hear it clearly now. A soft, steady push. Then a pause, then another. It does not tear or strike violently. Instead, it presses with quiet persistence, like a presence that refuses to leave. The canvas responds with a low rustling sound, rising and falling in uneven patterns. You listen closely. The sound begins to form a rhythm of its own, almost calming in its repetition. But beneath that calm there is something else. A reminder that the barrier between you and the open prairie is thin enough to feel every movement of the air beyond it. Very thin. You adjust your position once more, bringing your knees closer to your chest. The smaller your shape, the easier it is to hold warmth. This is something many travellers learn through experience rather than instruction. There are accounts of people curling tightly within their blankets during cold nights, reducing exposed surface area in an effort to conserve body heat. It was not always comfortable, but it was often effective. You can feel the difference already. The warmth builds slightly faster now, contained within the smaller space you have created. It is still faint, still fragile, but it lingers longer before fading. You hold on to it, aware that this slow accumulation is one of your few advantages. A faint smell rises from the blanket. Wool slightly worn, carrying traces of travel and time. It's not unpleasant. In fact, it feels grounding. A reminder that this object has been used, relied upon, perhaps even depended on by others before you. It has held warmth before. It can do so again. You breathe in slowly. The air inside the wagon feels different now, subtly warmer, slightly heavier. With each breath, moisture gathers, though you cannot see it clearly in the darkness. Some travellers noted that over time, the inside of a covered wagon could feel almost damp during cold nights as condensation formed from repeated breathing. It is a small trade. Warmer air but heavier. More comfortable but slightly closer. You accept it without question. Comfort in this setting is always relative. Outside, a new sound emerges, a faint shifting followed by a soft, uneven stomp. You pause, listening carefully, and realize it is the horses. They stand somewhere beyond the wagon, their weight moving from one leg to another, their breath visible in the cold air you cannot see but can imagine. They are restless. Animals sense the cold differently. Their bodies react to it without hesitation, adjusting, constantly seeking balance. Some historical records suggest that horses tethered overnight in freezing conditions often stamped their hooves to maintain circulation, preventing stiffness from settling into their legs. You can hear it happening now. A slow, repeated motion. Not frantic, not panicked, just persistent. You find it oddly reassuring. The presence of the animals means you are not entirely alone in this landscape. Their movement, their quiet sounds become part of the environment, blending with the wind and the shifting wood. Together they form a kind of rhythm that fills the night. You settle deeper into your position. The blanket now wraps more completely around you, covering your shoulders, your arms, your legs. You leave only a small space for your face, enough to breathe comfortably without letting too much warmth escape. It is a delicate balance. Too much coverage and the air becomes stifling. Too little and the cold slips in easily. You adjust carefully. Each movement is slower now, more deliberate. You are learning, even within these first moments, how to exist within this space without wasting energy. Sudden motions lose heat. Stillness preserves it. Time begins to stretch. Without clear light or visible change, minutes feel longer than they are. You find yourself measuring time not by a clock but by sensation. The slow cooling of the air, the steady build of warmth beneath the blanket, the rhythm of your own breathing. It becomes its own quiet system. A lesser-known detail from pioneer diaries suggests that many travelers struggled not only with physical discomfort during cold nights, but with the mental challenge of enduring long hours of stillness. Without distractions, the mind often turned inward, repeating thoughts, amplifying concerns, or drifting into strange patterns shaped by isolation and fatigue. You notice this beginning. Your thoughts move slowly, looping back on themselves. You consider the cold, then the wagon, then the wind, then return again to the cold. It's not distressing, not yet, just noticeable. You shift your focus. You listen instead. The wind continues its steady pressure. The horses move occasionally. The wagon creaks in soft response. These sounds anchor you, giving your mind something external to follow rather than circling endlessly inward. You remain aware, not tense, not anxious, but attentive. The night deepens further, though you cannot see it. You feel it in the air in the way the temperature seems to drop another small degree almost imperceptibly. Your breath feels cooler at the edges, now your fingers slightly less warm beneath the blanket. It is gradual, always gradual. Historians still debate how much preparation typical emigrants had for managing extreme cold during westward journeys. Some evidence suggests that while general knowledge existed, the exact intensity of prairie winters often surprised those experiencing them for the first time, especially in open areas without natural shelter. You understand that possibility now. Reading about cold is one thing. Sitting within it, feeling it press against every surface is another entirely. You draw the blanket closer once more, not out of panic, not out of the fear, just adjustment. The wagon remains around you unchanged in form but shifting constantly in feeling. It is not a perfect shelter. It does not block everything, but it creates a boundary, however thin, between you and the open night. And for now, that is enough. You breathe in slowly again. You exhale. You listen. The cold waits, and so do you. You notice the wind before you truly hear it. At first, it feels like a faint pressure against the canvas, a gentle push that barely disturbs the air inside your small shelter. Then it builds, not suddenly, but steadily, like a quiet decision being made across the open land. The prairie offers no resistance. There are no trees to slow it, no hills to soften its path. It moves freely, gathering strength as it travels. You sense the change. The canvas above you tightens slightly, then loosens again as the wind presses and releases. The sound becomes clearer now, a low, continuous brushing that moves along the wagon's curved surface. It does not strike sharply. It glides. It lingers. You listen more closely, boy. The rhythm is uneven, shaped by distance and terrain you cannot see. A longer push, then a pause. A shorter one followed by a softer whisper. The pattern never quite repeats yet. It never fully stops either. It is as if the night itself has begun to breathe. You pull the blanket closer around your shoulders. The air near your face feels cooler, now more active. Small currents slip through the wagon's edges, barely noticeable at first, then clearer once you begin to pay attention. They move along your cheek, across your forehead, finding any space that is not fully covered. You adjust instinctively. Your hand rises, pressing the blanket higher along your jaw, reducing the exposed area. The difference is immediate though slight. Less movement, less intrusion. You begin to understand how sensitive your body has become to even the smallest shifts in temperature. Very sensitive. Outside, the wind continues to gather. On the open plains of 19th century North America, travelers often described wind as one of the most persistent challenges of the journey. Unlike rain or snow which came and went, wind could remain for hours, even days, wearing down both body and shelter through constant exposure. It did not need to be violent to be effective. Its strength was in repetition. You feel that now. Each passing moment carries a quiet pressure against the wagon. Not enough to shake it, not enough to threaten its structure, but enough to remind you that the environment beyond is active, restless, and entirely indifferent to your comfort. The wagon responds in its own way. The wooden frame creaks softly, adjusting to the subtle shifts in force. The canvas rustles its fibers, moving against each other in a dry, whispering sound. Together they create a layered texture of noise, something between movement and stillness. You focus on it. The sound begins to settle into your awareness, becoming less of a disturbance and more of a presence. It fills the silence, giving the night a shape that you can follow. Without it, the stillness might feel heavier. With it, there is motion, even if you remain completely still. You shift slightly again, careful not to disturb the warmth you have built. Your knees remain drawn inward, your arms tucked close. The blanket holds its position, creating a small contained space where the air feels just a little softer. It is not warm in any comfortable sense, but it is warmer than outside. That difference matters more than anything else. A faint draft touches your neck. You pause, noticing it immediately. The sensation is precise, almost delicate, yet unmistakable. The wind has found a gap, perhaps where the canvas does not meet the frame perfectly, perhaps near the wagon's base, where the structure leaves small openings by design. You reach toward it slowly. Your fingers move along the edge of the blanket, adjusting it slightly, then pressing it more firmly against your shoulder. The draft lessens, though it does not disappear entirely. It becomes weaker, diffused. This is how it works. Not complete protection, but small improvements. Not elimination, but reduction. Travellers often adapted their wagons into simple ways, using spare cloth animal hides or even bundles of grass to block incoming air. These makeshift solutions were rarely perfect, but they could make a noticeable difference during long cold nights. You imagine doing the same, packing the edges more tightly, sealing the seams as best as possible. It would take time, it would take effort, but even a small barrier could shift the balance between discomfort and endurance. Outside, the horses move again. Their hooves press into the frozen ground with a muted thud, followed by a soft scraping sound as they adjust their stance. You can almost picture them, their breath visible in the cold air, their bodies turned slightly away from the wind, instinctively seeking a more sheltered angle. They understand the wind too. A curious detail from historical journals suggests that experienced travellers often paid close attention to animal behaviour during harsh conditions. Horses and oxen in particular could sense changes in weather patterns before they became obvious to humans, reacting early in subtle but meaningful ways. You listen for those signs now. The animals do not panic, they do not call out loudly. Their movements remain steady, measured much like your own. It is not fear that guides them, it is adjustment. You follow their example. Your breathing remains slow, controlled. You resist the urge to move too much, to fidget, to shift unnecessarily. Each movement risks losing the warmth you have carefully gathered. Stillness, you realize, is not weakness here. It is strategy. The wind presses again, slightly stronger this time. The canvas lifts just enough to make a sharper sound, a brief flutter, before settling back into place. The wagon holds firm. The frame absorbs the movement, distributing it quietly through its curved supports. You feel it, but only faintly. The structure may be simple, but it is not fragile in the way you first imagined. It bends, slightly adjusts, then returns. It does not resist the wind completely. It moves with it just enough to avoid breaking. There is something reassuring in that. The night deepens further. You cannot see it, but you feel the continued drop in temperature, subtle yet persistent. Your breath feels cooler as it leaves your mouth. Your fingers, even beneath the blanket, require a moment longer to regain warmth after each small movement. It is working its way inward, slowly, occasionally. Historians have long discussed whether early emigrants fully grasped the cumulative effect of wind combined with cold. Some interpretations suggest that while individual factors were understood, the way they reinforced each other, especially over long hours, often came as a harsh lesson learned through experience rather than preparation. You are learning it now. The wind does not simply exist alongside the cold, it carries it, it spreads it. It ensures that no surface remains untouched for long. Even inside the wagon, you feel its influence subtle but constant. You draw a slightly deeper breath. The air feels dry, almost brittle, as it enters your lungs. It expands within you, then leaves, taking a small amount of warmth with it each time. You become aware of this exchange, this quiet loss repeated again and again. You cannot stop it, but you can manage it. You keep your breathing steady, not too fast, not too shallow. You allow your body to settle into a rhythm that feels sustainable, conserving energy as much as possible. It is not something you are taught directly. It is something you arrive at naturally guided by the conditions around you. The wind continues. The wagon holds. You remain where you are, wrapped in your small pocket of warmth, aware of every shift, every sound, every change in the air. The night stretches forward, shaped now by motion you cannot see but can always feel. You listen. You adjust. You endure. You begin to notice that warmth does not arrive on its own. It must be gathered, carefully, quietly, with attention to every small detail that might help you hold on to it a little longer. The blanket around you has started to feel less cold than before, but it is not because the night has softened. It is because your body has slowly begun to shape the space around it. You shift your hands beneath the fabric. Your fingers press lightly against your arms, then settle between layers where the air feels slightly less sharp. The position is not perfect, but it reduces exposure. It allows your body heat to remain closer rather than drifting outward into the larger space. You realize something important. Warmth here is not created in large amounts. It is preserved in small pockets. You draw your knees in a little tighter, adjusting your posture so that less of your body is stretched outward. The movement is slow, deliberate, almost instinctive now. Each adjustment feels like part of a quiet process, one that you are beginning to understand without needing to think about it too much. Outside, the wind continues its steady passage across the land. Inside, the air feels slightly denser than before. Not warm in any comfortable sense, but changed. The difference is subtle yet noticeable. It gathers around you, shaped by your presence, held briefly before slipping away again. You try to hold on to it. A soft exhale escapes your lips, and you notice how the warmth lingers for just a moment before fading. You adjust the blanket higher again, allowing only a small opening for breath. It feels closer this way, more contained, more manageable. Travel journals from westward journeys often describe how people relied heavily on shared warmth when temperatures dropped sharply. Families huddled together beneath layers of wool and fur, reducing empty space so that heat would not dissipate too quickly. In some cases, even small groups would cluster tightly inside wagons, prioritizing warmth over comfort. You imagine that closeness now. Even alone, you begin to recreate it in a different way. You reduce space, you limit movement, you treat every inch of open air as something that must be controlled. The blanket shifts slightly as you move. A faint rustle follows. Then stillness returns. The fabric presses gently against your shoulder, your chest, your legs. It does not feel soft in the way it might during a warmer season. It feels purposeful, functional. You hold it there. A faint scent rises again from the material, something earthy and familiar. It reminds you that this is not new. It has been used, carried, relied upon. It has served this purpose before, even if in different conditions. You breathe in slowly. The air carries a trace of that scent, blending with the dryness of the cold. It grounds you in the moment, giving your senses something steady to focus on. You notice how your awareness sharpens when you pay attention to these small details. The cold becomes less abstract, more defined. Outside, the horses shift again. Their movement feels closer this time, or perhaps you are simply more attuned to it now. A soft snort breaks the steady rhythm of the wind, followed by a brief scrape of hooves against the frozen ground. The sound is not alarming. It is measured, controlled, as if they too are conserving energy. You listen for a moment longer, then you return your focus inward. Your shoulders relax slightly, though not completely. There is still a quiet tension in your posture, a readiness that does not fade entirely. It is not fear, it is awareness. The kind that remains even when you are still. You adjust the blanket again. This time you tuck one edge beneath your side, creating a more secure seal along the ground. The difference is small but noticeable. Less air moves along that edge now. The space feels slightly more contained. This is how it works. Small changes appear. A lesser-known observation from period diaries suggests that some travellers used whatever materials they had available to improve insulation inside their wagons. Spare clothing sacks, even dried grass, were sometimes pressed into gaps to reduce airflow. These adjustments were rarely perfect, but they could make a meaningful difference over long hours. You imagine those efforts, the careful placement, the trial and error. the quiet understanding that survival often depended on small improvised solutions rather than perfect design. You continue to refine your position. Your hands remain tucked, your legs drawn in your shoulders, slightly rounded. The shape you create feels compact, efficient. It allows the warmth you produce to remain closer, building solely rather than escaping immediately. It's not comfortable in the usual sense, but it is sustainable. The wind presses again, a little firmer this time. The canvas responds with a deeper rustling sound, the fabric shifting more noticeably before settling back into place. You feel a faint change in the air near your face, a slight increase in movement that quickly fades as you adjust the blanket once more. You're learning quickly, not through instruction but through sensation. Each shift in temperature, each small draft, each change in sound teaches you something. It guides your movements, shapes your decisions. You follow it. Your breathing remains steady. Inhale slowly, hold briefly, exhale gently. The rhythm becomes more consistent, less reactive. You begin to notice how this steadiness helps conserve energy, preventing unnecessary strain on your body. It keeps you calm, and calmness matters here. Some historical interpretations suggest that maintaining composure during harsh conditions was as important as physical preparation. Panic could lead to wasted movement, increased exposure, and faster loss of heat. Those who remained still, attentive, and controlled often fared better over long nights. You understand why. Stillness preserves. Your eyes drift closed for a moment, then open again. The darkness inside the wagon feels complete now, with no trace of the earlier light remaining. The outside world has faded entirely from view, leaving only sound and sensation to guide your awareness. You listen again. The wind continues its steady presence. The horses move occasionally. The wagon creaks in response to subtle shifts. Together, these elements form a quiet environment that feels both active and still at the same time. You settle deeper into it. Your body feels slightly warmer than before, though the difference is delicate. It is not a change you can rely on completely, but it is enough to sustain you for now. Enough to keep the cold from overwhelming you too quickly. You hold on to that. Time moves slowly, not in clear intervals, but in gradual changes. The air cools by small degrees. The sounds shift subtly. Your awareness rises and falls, drifting between focus and rest. You remain within it, wrapped in layers, held in stillness, aware of every small detail that shapes this moment. The night continues, and you continue with it. You begin to notice the horses more clearly now, not by sight but through rhythm. A slow shift of weight, a soft exhale that drifts through the cold air, the faint, uneven sound of hooves pressing against ground that offers little comfort. Their presence lingers just beyond the thin barrier of the wagon, steady and alive within the vast stillness. You listen. Another quiet stomp, then a pause. The pattern repeats, irregular but calm, as if each movement is measured carefully to conserve energy. The animals do not rush, they do not panic, they endure. You feel a strange sense of reassurance. Their movements anchor the night, giving it a kind of structure. Without them, the silence might feel too complete, too empty. With them, there is continuity, a reminder that life continues even in this cold, even in this darkness. You draw the blanket closer. The air near your face shifts again, touched by a faint current that slips through the wagon's edges. It brushes against your cheek, then fades, leaving behind a lingering chill that settles slowly. You adjust your position slightly, not much, just enough to reduce the exposure. Your shoulder turns inward, your chin lowers closer to your chest, and the opening near your face becomes smaller. The change is subtle, but it matters. It always matters. Outside, one of the horses exhales more sharply. The sound carries a soft force, followed by a brief snort, then stillness again. You can almost imagine the cloud of breath rising and disappearing into the dark air. Their bodies generate heat, yet even they cannot escape the cold entirely. They manage it differently. Historical records suggest that horses travelling with wagon parties were often left to endure the night with minimal shelter, relying on their natural resilience. Their thick coats provided some protection, but prolonged exposure still posed risks, especially when wind and low temperatures combined. You hear them shifting again. A gentle movement this time, followed by a quieter scrape. It feels closer, or perhaps the wind has shifted the sound toward you. Either way, their presence feels more immediate now, more real. You listen carefully, letting the sound settle into your awareness. It becomes part of the night, part of the steady rhythm that surrounds you. The wind, the wagon, the animals, your own breath. Each element moving at its own pace, yet blending into a single continuous experience. You remain still. Your hands stay tucked beneath the blanket, pressed lightly against your body. The warmth there has grown slightly enough to feel like something you can depend on, even if only for a short while. It is not much, but it is yours. A faint creak runs along the wagon frame. You feel it more than hear it this time. A subtle shift beneath you as the wood responds to the changing temperature and pressure. The structure does not resist, it adapts. It bends just enough to hold together. You find comfort in that. The wagon is not perfect, but it is resilient in its own way. It was built for movement across long distances, for carrying weight and enduring rough terrain. Now it serves a quieter purpose, holding you within its curved shape as the night presses in. You breathe in slowly. The air feels slightly heavier, now touched by the warmth and moisture of repeated breaths. It gathers within the small space, creating a thin layer of difference between inside and outside. Not enough to call it warm, but enough to soften the edge of the cold. You notice how it changes your awareness. The contrast becomes clearer. You are no longer just in the cold, you're within a small pocket that resists it, however gently. Another movement from the horses draws your attention. This time the sound is followed by a faint jingle, perhaps from a loose piece of harness or metal. It is brief, almost delicate, then gone again. You listen for it once more, but it does not repeat. It leaves an impression. Small sounds carry weight here. They break the pattern, then return you to it. They remind you how sensitive your senses have become, how attuned you are to every detail. You settle again. Your body feels slightly more accustomed to the conditions now. Not comfortable, not relaxed in the usual sense, but adjusted. The initial sharpness of the cold has softened into something more constant, more predictable. You can work with that. Accounts from travellers sometimes mention how the first hours of cold were often the most difficult as the body adjusted to the sudden drop in temperature. Over time, a kind of equilibrium could form, not true warmth, but a balance that allowed for endurance. You feel that balance beginning. It is fragile, but present. You draw your legs in a little tighter, refining the shape you have created. The blanket shifts with you, then settles again, holding close. The air inside feels slightly more contained, less prone to sudden drafts. You hold still once more. The wind continues its steady passage outside, unchanged in its persistence. The wagon responds with its soft creaks and rustles, a quiet conversation between structure and environment. The horses remain nearby, their movements slower, now more spaced out, as if they too have settled into a rhythm that conserves energy. You hear one final shift, then a longer pause, followed by the steady sound of breathing carried faintly through the night air. You listen to it. It is calm. You allow your own breathing to follow a similar pattern. Slow, even, controlled. It helps. Not in a dramatic way, but in a subtle one. It keeps your body from tensing, from reacting too strongly to each small change. It allows you to remain within the moment rather than resisting it. The night stretches forward. You cannot measure it, not precisely, but you feel its length in the steady continuation of everything around you. Nothing rushes, nothing breaks the pattern, it simply continues. You remain within it, wrapped in layers, surrounded by quiet movement, aware of the animals outside, the wind across the plains, the structure that holds you. You endure alongside them, not alone, never entirely alone. You begin to think about fire, not as a bright, distant idea, but as something immediate, practical, and almost necessary. The memory of warmth becomes clearer now, sharper in contrast to the steady chill pressing around you. You can almost feel the difference it would make even before taking action. You hesitate for a moment. Leaving the wagon means exposure. The air outside is harsher, more active, and far less forgiving than the small pocket you have created. Yet staying inside without improving your warmth may slowly work against you over time. You weigh the choice. Carefully, travellers often prepared their fires before darkness settled fully, knowing that once night took hold, visibility dropped and temperatures fell quickly. Gathering fuel in daylight, arranging it in advance, and keeping it dry were considered essential habits, especially on open plains where resources could be scarce. You realize you are late, not dangerously late, but later than ideal. The wind presses softly against the canvas again, as if reminding you of the conditions waiting outside. You listen to it for a moment, then shift your position, preparing to move. Slowly, you loosen the blanket just enough to free your arms, keeping most of it wrapped around your shoulders. The cold reaches in, immediately brushing against your skin with a sharper edge than before. You pause, letting your body adjust, resisting the urge to move too quickly. Sudden movement wastes heat. You remember that. You lift the edge of the canvas and step out. The air meets you at once. It feels colder than before, though the difference may be more about contrast than actual change. The small warmth you held inside the wagon disappears quickly, replaced by the open, moving cold of the prairie night. You stand still for a moment. Your breath leaves your mouth in a faint cloud visible for just a second before fading into the darkness. The wind touches your face directly now, no longer softened by layers of fabric. It is not violent, but it is constant. You move with purpose. Near the wagon, a small collection of supplies rests where they were placed earlier. You crouch beside them, your movements controlled, your hands working quickly but not hurriedly. You gather a few pieces of wood, feeling their dryness, their weight. They will have to do. A lesser-known detail from pioneer accounts suggests that travellers often carried limited firewood across long stretches of land, relying on whatever could be found along the way. In treeless regions, this sometimes meant using dried grass animal dung or broken wagon parts in extreme situations. You are fortunate. You have wood. You arrange it carefully on the ground, shielding it slightly from the wind with your body. The process is simple, but it requires attention. Each piece must be placed with intention, allowing air to flow without letting the structure collapse too easily. You strike the fire. The first attempt produces only a faint spark, quickly lost in the darkness. You try again, adjusting your angle, protecting the small flame from the wind. This time it catches briefly a tiny glow that flickers uncertainly. You wait, then you feed it gently. The flame grows slowly at first, then with a bit more confidence as it finds the dry edges of the wood. It does not leap or burst, it builds steady and controlled its light, casting soft, uneven shadows across the ground. You feel the warmth almost immediately. Not strong, not enough to transform the night, but present. You hold your hands near it, careful not to move too close, allowing the heat to reach you gradually. The sensation is subtle yet deeply noticeable after the steady cold. It spreads across your skin, easing the sharpness you had begun to accept. You breathe out slowly. The fire continues to grow. You adjust the wood slightly, ensuring it remains stable, giving it space to breathe. The wind still moves around you, but here near the ground and behind the wagon it feels slightly less direct, enough to allow the flame to hold. Fire was often both a comfort and a risk for wagon travellers. While it provided warmth and light, it also required constant attention, especially near flammable materials like canvas and dry grass. Many chose to keep fires small and controlled, prioritizing safety over intensity. You follow that. The flame remains modest, contained within its small arrangement of wood. It flickers steadily, its light reflecting faintly against the side of the wagon. The canvas glows softly in places, revealing its texture for just a moment before the shadows shift again. You take in the scene. The wagon, the fire, the open prairie beyond barely visible in the darkness. The horses standing nearby, their shapes outlined faintly by the low light. Everything feels connected now, part of a single quiet moment. You remain there briefly, long enough to gather some warmth, long enough to feel the difference. Then you return to the wagon, carefully. You lift the canvas again and step inside, bringing with you a trace of the fire's warmth. It fades quickly, but not entirely. It lingers just enough to soften the air around you, to remind your body of what warmth feels like. You settle back into place. The blanket wraps around you once more, holding close now, slightly less cold than before. Your hands, having absorbed a bit of heat, feel more responsive, less stiff. It helps. The fire continues outside its presence, steady, its warmth subtle but valuable. You cannot feel it strongly from within the wagon, but you know it is there, working quietly against the cold. That knowledge matters. You adjust your position again, returning to the compact shape you have learned to maintain. Your breathing slows once more, your awareness settling into the familiar rhythm of windward and distant movement. Some historians have questioned how consistently travellers were able to maintain fires during harsh nights, especially in exposed environments. Conditions varied widely, and success often depended on preparation, experience, and a bit of patience. Tonight you have managed, for now. You close your eyes briefly, then open them again. The darkness remains. The cold remains, but so does your small, growing understanding of how to endure it. And that more than anything begins to make a difference. You begin to notice the cold in a different way, not as a single sensation but as something layered. It rests first on your skin, light but persistent, like a thin veil that never lifts. Then it settles deeper, moving slowly through fabric, through space, through the small pocket of warmth you have created. It does not rush. It advances in quiet stages, each one subtle enough to almost ignore. Almost. You breathe in and feel the air more clearly now. It enters cool sharp at the edges, then softens slightly as it passes deeper. When you exhale, the warmth leaves you in a faint stream, disappearing into the darkness before you can fully register its loss. You become aware of this exchange repeated again and again. You cannot stop it, but you begin to manage it. Your breathing slows further, becoming more controlled, less reactive. Each inhale is steady, each exhale measured. It is not something you decide consciously. It simply happens as your body adjusts to the conditions around you. The fire outside continues its quiet work. You can sense it without seeing it, a faint presence that alters the air just enough to remind you that warmth still exists beyond your immediate reach. Occasionally, a soft crackle reaches your ears, carried briefly by the shifting wind before fading again. You listen for it. It becomes a point of focus, something steady within the larger rhythm of the night. The wagon creaks again. This time the sound feels deeper, as though the wood has settled further into the cold. It does not alarm you. It feels a natural part of the structure responding to the environment. The frame holds, adapting quietly, just as you are. You shift your hands slightly. Your fingers press against your arms, then slide inward, beneath another fold of the blanket. The warmth there is faint, but present enough to maintain sensation without strain. You flex your fingers gently, not to move them much, but to remind them to remain active. Circulation matters. Records from frontier life often mention how people remained aware of their extremities during cold nights, knowing that fingers and toes were especially vulnerable to prolonged exposure. Small movements, even minimal ones, could help maintain warmth and prevent stiffness from setting in too deeply. You follow that instinct. Your movements are small, almost unnoticeable, but purposeful. A slight flex, a gentle shift, then stillness again. You return quickly to a position that conserves heat, careful not to overcorrect. Outside, the wind shifts direction slightly. You feel it before you fully hear it, a change in the way the air brushes against the wagon. The canvas responds with a different pattern, now less of a steady push, more of an uneven flutter that comes and goes. You notice the difference. It reminds you that nothing here remains fixed for long. Even the wind changes its approach, adjusting its path across the open land. You adjust with it. A small movement of the blanket near your shoulder, tightening one edge, loosening another. You respond to the draft not with urgency, but with quiet precision. Each change is measured, guided by sensation rather than guesswork. A faint sound from the horses draws your attention again. This time it is softer, more distant, as though they have settled into a more stable position. Their movements are less frequent, now spaced further apart. You imagine them standing with heads lowered, conserving energy, allowing their bodies to endure the cold in the way they have learned over time. It has been observed that animals often enter a quieter state during prolonged cold exposure, reducing unnecessary movement to preserve energy. This stillness is not weakness, it is adaptation. You recognize the same pattern in yourself. Your body seeks stillness, not complete stillness, but enough to reduce loss, enough to maintain what little warmth you have gathered. The urge to move fades slightly, replaced by a deeper awareness of position and balance. You settle again. The blanket presses gently around you, holding its shape. The air inside feels slightly more stable, less prone to sudden changes. It is not warmer in any dramatic sense, but it is consistent. and that consistency allows your body to relax just a little more. A small detail comes to mind. Some travelers noted that placing a covering loosely over the face while leaving space to breathe could help retain warmth without causing discomfort. It was a delicate balance requiring careful adjustment to avoid trapping too much moisture while still reducing heat loss. You consider it briefly, then you lift a small edge of the blanket closer to your chin, allowing it to hover just near your mouth. The effect is immediate, though subtle. The air you breathe feels slightly less sharp, softened by the barrier. You hold it there, carefully. Your breathing remains steady, your posture controlled. The cold continues its slow presence, but it no longer feels as sudden or overwhelming as it did at the beginning. It has become something you understand, something you can respond to rather than react against. There remains uncertainty about how well early travelers adapted to nights like this on their first journeys. Some accounts suggest rapid learning through experience, while others imply that many struggled repeatedly before finding effective methods of endurance. You feel somewhere in between, learning but still adjusting. The fire crackles again, faint but distinct. You listen to it, letting the sound anchor your awareness once more. It reminds you that warmth, though distant, is still part of this environment. It has not vanished, it simply requires effort to maintain. You remain within the wagon, wrapped, contained, aware. The wind moves, the wood creaks, the animals breathe. The fire flickers somewhere beyond your sight. All of it continues steady and unbroken. You follow that rhythm. You endure within it. The night deepens further, and you remain. You begin to feel the presence of others more clearly now. Not through sight, but through small shifts in the air around you. A faint movement to your left. A quiet adjustment somewhere near your feet. The subtle sound of fabric brushing against fabric. You're not alone inside this narrow space, and the awareness of shared presence changes how the night feels. You listen, another slow movement, then stillness again. The wagon does not offer much room, so every motion carries a trace of sound. Even the smallest shift becomes noticeable. You realize how carefully each person must move, not only to conserve warmth, but to avoid disturbing the balance that has formed. You adjust your own position slightly, just enough to accommodate the space around you. Your shoulder shifts inward, your knees remain drawn close, and your blanket presses more firmly along your side. The closeness of others creates a subtle warmth that did not exist before. It is not strong, but it is shared. Shared warmth matters. Accounts from emigrant families often describe how people slept close together inside wagons during cold nights, not simply out of necessity, but as a deliberate way to preserve heat. Body warmth, when combined, could raise the temperature of a small enclosed space more effectively than any single source alone. You feel that effect now. The air seems slightly less sharp, slightly more stable. It is a small change, but one that your body notices immediately. You remain still, allowing it to build, not wanting to disrupt it with unnecessary movement. A quiet breath reaches your ear, soft, steady. You do not turn toward it. You simply register it as part of the environment. Another presence, another source of warmth, another rhythm blending with your own. You follow that rhythm. Your breathing adjusts slightly, aligning more naturally with the quiet pattern around you. Inhale, pause, exhale. The shared air moves gently, circulating within the limited space. It becomes easier to settle. A faint scent drifts through the wagon. Wool leather, perhaps a trace of wood smoke carried in from outside. It is layered, familiar and grounding. These smells do not stand out sharply. They blend together, forming a quiet background that reinforces the sense of enclosure. You breathe it in slowly. It feels less empty here now. Outside, the wind continues, but its presence feels slightly more distant from within this shared space. The canvas still shifts, the wood still creaks, but inside the air has changed. It feels held, contained. A small movement near your feet draws your attention again. Someone adjusts their position, perhaps pulling a blanket tighter, perhaps seeking a more comfortable angle. The sound is brief, followed by stillness. No words are spoken, none are needed. Silence carries meaning here. Diaries from the trail sometimes describe nights where conversation faded quickly as temperatures dropped. Speaking required energy, and energy meant heat. Many chose quiet instead, allowing stillness to preserve what little warmth they had. You understand that instinct. You remain quiet. Your body settles further into its position, finding a balance between comfort and efficiency. The warmth around you continues to build, slowly shaped by the presence of others and the limited space you share. You notice how different it feels from earlier. Less exposed. More stable. A faint rustle near your shoulder suggests another small adjustment, then stillness again. Each person seems to be finding their own way to endure the night, guided by the same quiet logic. Reduce movement, hold warmth. Wait. A lesser-known observation from historical accounts suggests that even slight increases in enclosed warmth could significantly improve endurance during freezing nights. A few degrees, barely noticeable at first, can make the difference between restless discomfort and sustainable rest. You feel that difference? It is subtle, but real. Your hands remain tucked close, your fingers resting against your arms. The warmth there feels more reliable than before, less prone to fading quickly. You flex them gently once, then allow them to settle again. No wasted motion. The fire outside crackles faintly, its sound reaching you through layers of canvas and wind. It is distant but steady, a reminder that there is another source of warmth even if it cannot fully reach you here. You hold on to that thought, not as comfort but as awareness. The wagon shifts slightly as the wind presses against it once more. The structure responds with a low, familiar creak, then settles again. Inside, the shared space remains steady, protected not by strength but by closeness. You notice your shoulders relaxing a little more. Not completely, but enough. The tension that held your body earlier begins to ease, replaced by a quieter form of alertness. You're still aware of the cold, still aware of the night stretching ahead, but you're no longer reacting to every small change. You are adapting. Interpretations differ on how quickly travelers became accustomed to conditions like these. Some accounts suggest that even experienced individuals found each night unique, shaped by subtle variations in wind temperature and shelter. You sense that complexity now. No two moments feel exactly the same. Each adjustment leads to another. Each sensation shifts slightly over time. You remain within it, wrapped in shared warmth, surrounded by quiet presence, listening to the steady rhythm of breath and movement around you. The night continues unchanged in its vastness, but altered within this small space. You hold your position. You breathe. You wait. The cold presses from outside. Warmth gathers slowly within, and for now the balance holds. You begin to notice how the wagon itself feels different from before, not just as shelter, but as something with a purpose shaped long before this night. The curved ribs above you, the wooden base beneath you, the stretched canvas enclosing everything together. Each part was designed with movement in mind, not comfort, yet now it serves as your only protection against the cold. You shift slightly and let your hand rest along the floor. The wood feels firm, holding a quiet chill that has settled into it over hours of exposure. It does not feel inviting yet. It is steadier than the frozen ground outside. That difference alone becomes meaningful. You trace the grain lightly with your fingers. It reminds you that this wagon has travelled. It has endured miles of uneven terrain, shifting weather, long days of motion followed by nights like this. It was never meant to be a home, yet for many travellers it became one in moments like these. Records from the mid-19th century note that discovered wagons were the primary vehicles used by settlers moving west across North America. They were often constructed with lightweight wood and arched bows to support a canvas covering, allowing them to carry supplies across long distances without overburdening draft animals. You feel the result of that design now. Light enough to move, thin enough to feel. You shift your weight again, careful not to disturb the balance of warmth around you. The presence of others still lingers nearby, their quiet breathing blending into the shared air. It creates a gentle consistency, a rhythm that steadies your awareness. The wagon creaks softly. It is not a single sound, but a layered one. A slight bend in the wood, a faint tension, release a response to the wind that continues to press from outside. You begin to recognize these sounds as part of the structure's language. It is not failing, it is adjusting. You settle a little deeper into your position, letting your body align with the surface beneath you. The blanket holds close shapes now to your form, containing what little warmth has gathered over time. You notice how still everything feels inside. Not silent, but contained. The outside world remains active, yet here within the curved space of the wagon, the movement feels distant, filtered, reduced to softer versions of itself. A faint crackle from the fire reaches you again. It is quieter now, perhaps because of distance, perhaps because the wind carries it unevenly. Still it remains present, a steady reminder that warmth continues to exist just beyond your reach. You listen for it, then return your focus inward. A subtle detail emerges in your awareness. The air inside the wagon feels layered slightly warmer, near where bodies rest cooler near the edges, where drafts still slip through. The difference is small but noticeable when you remain still long enough to feel it. You adjust accordingly. Your shoulders draw slightly inward. Your legs remain tucked close. Your head lowers just enough to stay within the warmer pocket. These movements are quite controlled, almost automatic now. You are learning the space. A lesser-known detail from traveller accounts suggests that many wagon occupants became highly aware of internal airflow during cold nights, adjusting their positions to remain within areas where heat gathered most effectively. It was not something taught directly, but something felt over time. You feel it now, not as instruction, but as instincts. Outside, the wind shifts again, brushing against the canvas with a softer, more irregular pattern. The wagon responds with a gentler rustle, less forceful than before. The change is subtle, yet it alters the overall rhythm of the night. You notice the difference. Even small changes matter. A quiet movement from nearby draws your attention once more. Someone shifts slightly, then becomes still again. The shared warmth remains, though it adjusts with each movement, redistributing itself across the limited space. You remain careful. Your own movements are minimal, guided by the need to preserve what has been built. The warmth here is not strong enough to waste. It must be held. Some historians suggest that while wagons were essential for transport, they were never intended as long-term shelters in extreme conditions. Their role was temporary, transitional, and moving space rather than a fixed refuge. Yet in practice, many relied on them for protection during nights exactly like this. You understand that reliance now. The wagon is not ideal, but it is enough. You draw a slow breath. The air feels slightly less sharp than it did earlier, though still cold by any measure. Your body is adjusted, finding a balance between loss and retention, between exposure and protection. It is a quiet equilibrium. You hold it carefully. The sounds around you continue their steady pattern. Wind outside, wood within, breathing nearby, fire at a distance. Each element remains consistent, forming a kind of continuity that carries the night forward. You follow that continuity. Time moves without clear markers, no visible changes, no obvious shifts, only gradual sensation. You remain within it, wrapped in layers, supported by structure, surrounded by quiet presence. The wagon holds its shape around you, imperfect but resilient, a temporary refuge shaped by necessity and endurance. You listen once more, then settle again. The night continues, and so do you. You begin to notice your energy as much as the cold. Not in a dramatic way, but in small, steady signals that move through your body. A slight heaviness in your limbs. A slower response when you shift your hands. A quiet awareness that warmth and strength are connected more closely than you first realized. You remain still. That helps. Each unnecessary movement costs something, even if it feels minor at the time. The warmth you have gathered is not fixed. It drifts, fades, and must be preserved with care. You sense that your body understands this, guiding you towards stillness without effort. Your breathing remains steady. Inhale slowly, exhale gently. The rhythm has become familiar now, almost automatic. It keeps your body calm, your energy balanced. Your awareness focused without strain. You feel how important this quiet control has become. Outside, the wind continues, though it feels slightly less forceful than before. Or perhaps you have grown accustomed to it. The canvas shifts with a softer sound, now less of a push and more of a quiet brushing that comes and goes. The wagon responds with faint creaks, subtle adjustments that no longer draw your full attention. You have learned their language. Your hands remain tucked close, resting beneath the blanket where warmth lingers most reliably. You flex your fingers once gently, then allow them to settle again. The movement is small, but it reminds you that circulation must be maintained. Even now, trail journals consistently mention how travelers paid close attention to their energy during cold nights, understanding that exhaustion could reduce the body's ability to generate and retain heat. Rest was not only for comfort, it was a form of protection. You feel that truth quietly. The less you move, the more you preserve, but you cannot become completely stiff. A slight shift in your shoulders follows subtle enough not to disturb the warmth around you. The blanket adjusts with you pressing closer along one side, loosening slightly along another. You refine the shape again, guided by sensation. Always guided. A faint crackle from the fire reaches you once more. It sounds softer now, more distant, yet still steady. You imagine the small flame continuing its quiet work outside, consuming the wood piece by piece, releasing warmth into the open air where most of it's quickly carried away. Still, it matters. Even a small fire can change how a night feels. A small but revealing detail is that many travelers relied not only on food for energy, but on timing their meals carefully before nightfall. Eating shortly before resting allowed the bodies to generate warmth through digestion, providing a subtle but valuable source of heat during the coldest hours. You think about that, about how warmth can come from within as well as without. Your body feels slightly steadier now, less reactive to the cold, more settled into its rhythm. It is not stronger, not warmer in any obvious way, but more balanced. That balance becomes everything. A quiet movement nearby draws your attention. Someone shifts slightly, perhaps adjusting their blanket or position. The shared warmth shifts with them, redistributing itself across the small space. You feel the change subtle but immediate and respond with a slight adjustment of your own. You remain careful. No sudden movements, no unnecessary motion. The night rewards patience. Outside, the horses remain quiet. Their earlier restlessness has softened into longer stretches of stillness, broken only by occasional shifts. You hear a faint exhale, then silence again. They have settled into their own form of endurance, guided by instinct rather than thought. You follow that example. Your posture remains compact, efficient, sustainable. You resist the urge to stretch or reposition too often, knowing that comfort here is temporary while warmth must be maintained. The air inside the wagon feels slightly heavier now. Your breathing, combined with that of others, has altered the space in a subtle way. It feels less sharp, less empty. The difference is small, but it allows your body to relax just a little further. You notice it. You accept it. Accounts do not fully agree on how well early travelers managed their energy over long cold nights. Some descriptions suggest careful discipline, while others hint at exhaustion that made even simple decisions more difficult as time passed. You sense both possibilities. Your body feels calm, yet there is a quiet awareness beneath that calm, a recognition that the night is long and not yet complete. You remain steady. The blanket holds close, your hands remain tucked. Your breathing remains even. Each element works together, forming a system that supports you without requiring constant attention. You are part of that system now. The wagon creaks softly again. The sound feels familiar, almost reassuring. It signals that the structure still holds, still responds, still adapts to the conditions outside. You no longer react to it. You simply register it and move on. Your awareness shifts inward once more. You focus on the small pocket of warmth you have created, the steady rhythm of your breath, the quiet presence of others nearby. The outside world fades slightly, not because it has changed, but because you have adapted to it. This is how endurance forms, not through resistance, but through adjustment. You remain where you are, wrapped in layers, held in stillness, balance between cold and warmth, movement and rest, awareness and calm. The night continues, and you continue with it. You begin to notice the edges of your body more clearly. Not where you are warm, but where you are not. Your fingertips, even tucked beneath layers, feel slower to respond. Your toes, hidden beneath fabric and stillness, seem distant, as if they belong to a quieter part of you. The difference is subtle at first, then more defined as you pay attention. You do not panic. You observe. A slight shift of your foot inside the blanket. A gentle flex of your fingers against your arm. The movements are small, controlled enough to remind your body that these parts still belong to you. Circulation must continue. You draw a slightly deeper breath and feel the air move through you. Cool at the edges, but steady. Your chest rises slowly, then falls again, the motion consistent, reliable. It grounds you. On winter trails, contemporary observers noted that exposed skin could lose sensation quickly during long cold nights, especially when wind remained constant. Many travelers learn to monitor their extremities carefully, using small regular movements to maintain blood flow without losing too much heat. You follow that approach now. A quiet flex, a brief pause, then stillness again. You return quickly to conserving warmth, keeping your hands close, your feet tucked, your body contained within its small protective shape. The wagon remains steady around you. The wood creaks less frequently now, as if it has settled into the temperature. The canvas still shifts with the wind, though the sound has softened, becoming more of a background presence than something that demands attention. You notice how your awareness has changed. Earlier each sound felt new. Now they feel familiar. You recognize the rhythm of the wind, the subtle movement of the structure, the quiet breathing nearby. They no longer pull your focus, they support it. A faint sound from outside reaches you again. A horse exhales slow and measured, followed by a soft movement of hooves against the ground. The pattern is less frequent now, more spaced out, as though the animals have settled into a deeper state of endurance. You listen, then let the sound pass. Your body feels slightly heavier, not uncomfortable, but weighted, as if it is conserving energy by reducing unnecessary tension. Your shoulders relax further, your head lowers slightly, and your breathing deepens without effort. It feels natural. A subtle practice among some travelers involved rubbing hands together briefly before tucking them back into warmth, using friction to generate a small burst of heat. It was not a lasting solution, but it could restore sensation enough to maintain awareness. You try it once. Your hands move gently beneath the blanket, pressing together, creating a faint warmth that spreads across your fingers. It is small but noticeable. You hold on to it for a moment, then return your hands to stillness. It helps, only for a while, but that is enough. The fire outside crackles faintly again, though the sound feels weaker than before. You wonder if the wood has begun to burn down, if the flame is reduced to smaller embers that glow more than they flicker. You cannot see it, but you imagine it. A quiet glow in the darkness, holding its warmth close, releasing it slowly into the night. Not strong enough to change the air around you, but steady enough to exist. That steadiness matters. Sources differ when describing how long small fires could be maintained under these conditions. Some accounts suggest careful tending allowed them to last through the night, while others indicate that limited fuel often reduced them to embers well before dawn. You sense that uncertainty. The fire may last, or it may fade. You cannot rely on it completely. So you return your focus inward. Your blanket remains secure, your position compact, your breathing steady. The warmth you hold is your primary resource, now shaped by your own body and the shared space around you. You notice a faint tightening along your jaw, not discomfort but awareness. You release it slowly, letting your muscles soften, your posture settle further. Tension uses energy. Energy creates warmth. But wasted tension serves no purpose. You conserve instead. The night feels deeper now, not darker in a visible sense, but heavier, more complete. Time stretches further, marked only by the slow progression of sensation rather than any clear change in the environment. You remain within it, wrapped, contained, aware. Your fingers move once more gently, then rest. Your toes shift slightly, then settle again. Each movement is measured, intentional, just enough to maintain connection without disrupting balance. You are learning the limits and the possibilities. The wagon holds. The wind moves. The animals endure. You do the same. You begin to notice the sounds more than the cold. Not because the cold has faded, but because your awareness has shifted. The night speaks in small ways, and now you can hear each layer more clearly, as if your senses have adjusted to listen instead of react. You remain still. The wagon surrounds you with its quiet structure, holding back the open prairie just enough to soften what reaches you. Inside, the air feels contained, shaped by breath and stillness. Outside, the world continues without pause. You listen. The wind moves first. A long, gentle sweep across the canvas, followed by a faint tremble as the fabric settles. Then another, slightly shorter brushing past in a different direction. It does not form a pattern you can predict. It simply continues shifting without warning. Then the wood responds, a low creak drawn out and slow, like something adjusting under quiet pressure. It is not sharp, it does not startle. It feels almost deliberate, as if the wagon itself is aware of the strain and responding in its own careful way. You recognize it now? A normal sound, a reassuring one. Beyond that, there are smaller details. A faint scrape of hoof against frozen ground. A soft exhale that carries briefly through the air. A distant movement that may be nothing more than wind passing evenly over the terrain. Each sound arrives gently, then fades. You follow them one by one, allowing your attention to move outward rather than inward. It steadies your thoughts, giving them direction without effort. Trail diaries often describe how nights on the open plains were rarely silent, even when no voices were heard. The environment carried its own quiet language, made up of wind animals and shifting materials, each contributing to a continuous background of sound. You hear that language now. It is subtle, but constant. You adjust your head slightly, lowering it further into the warmth of the blanket. The fabric brushes softly against your cheek, carrying that familiar scent of wool and travel. It grounds you again, bringing your awareness back to your immediate space. Inside feels different now. Not warmer in any dramatic sense, but more defined. The air near your face is softer than the air near the edges. The space around your body holds on to heat just a little longer than before. You remain within that space. A quiet movement nearby draws your attention. Someone shifts slowly, carefully, then becomes still again. The shared warmth adjusts with the movement, redistributing itself in subtle ways. You feel it then respond with a small adjustment of your own. It becomes a silent coordination. No words, no signals, just awareness. A small but telling observation from historical accounts suggests that groups travelling together often developed an unspoken rhythm during harsh conditions, adjusting their movements instinctively to maintain balance within shared spaces. You sense that here. The night encourages it. Your breathing aligns again with the quiet pattern around you. Inhale, pause, exhale. The rhythm feels deeper now, less conscious, more natural. It helps you settle. The fire outside crackles faintly once more. The sound is softer than before, less frequent. It suggests smaller flames, perhaps embers forming as the larger pieces of wood burn down. You imagine the glow low and steady, giving off just enough heat to persist. It remains part of the night. Even if you cannot feel it directly, there is no single explanation for how travellers perceive sound during long nights like this. Some accounts suggest heightened awareness due to stillness, while others describe a gradual fading of attention as fatigue set in. You feel both. Your senses are sharp, yet calm. You notice everything, but nothing unsettles you. Each sound is accepted, understood, allowed to pass without resistance. The wind shifts again. This time it carries a slightly sharper edge, a brief increase in pressure against the canvas. The fabric responds with a firmer rustle, then settles quickly. The wagon holds steady, absorbing the movement without strain. You remain where you are. Your hands stay tucked, your body compact, your warmth contained. The sounds around you continue their quiet progression, marking time in a way that feels both slow and continuous. You follow them. The horses move once more. A soft step, a pause, then stillness. Their presence remains steady even when their movements are not. You feel it as much as you hear it, a quiet assurance that life continues just beyond your immediate space. You listen for a moment longer, then let it fade. The night deepens further, not in darkness, which is already complete, but in sensation. The air feels heavier, the sounds more distant, the rhythm more settled. Everything moves towards stillness, though nothing fully stops. You remain within it, listening, breathing, waiting. The cold continues its quiet presence. The wagon continues to hold, and the night continues to speak in soft, steady ways. You begin to notice how your thoughts move in the quiet, not quickly, not clearly, but in slow circles that return to the same few ideas softened by the rhythm of the night. The cold remains, the wagon holds. The wind continues and your mind settles somewhere between awareness and rest. You remain still. Your body has found a position it can maintain, one that does not demand constant adjustment. The blanket rests close around you, shaped by earlier movements, holding a small and steady pocket of warmth. It is enough, for now. A faint sound from outside reaches you, then fades before you fully follow it. You no longer react to every shift. Instead, you let the sounds pass through your awareness, noticing them without needing to respond. It changes how the night feels, less like something pressing against you, more like something you're moving through. Your breathing remains slow. Even, the air enters cool leaves slightly warmer, then disappears into the shared space around you. Each breath feels quieter than the last, as if your body is conserving not only heat but effort. You drift slightly, not into sleep, but into a softer state where thoughts lose their sharp edges. You think about the path that brought you here, though not in detail. Just the sense of travel, of movement across open land, of days that felt longer and warmer than this. It feels distant now. On journeys like this, people came to rely not only on preparation but on adaptation. Conditions change constantly, and what worked one night might fail the next. Survival depended less on perfect planning and more on the ability to adjust moment by moment. You understand that now. This night is its own challenge, separate from any other. A slight movement nearby draws your attention again. Someone shifts slowly, then becomes still. The shared warmth shifts with them, barely noticeable but present. You adjust without thinking, refining your position to remain within the most stable part of the air. It happens naturally, no effort. The wind presses again, softer than before, its movement less forceful, more distant. The canvas responds with a quiet rustle that feels almost familiar now, like a sound you've known for much longer than just a few hours. You listen, then let it fade. Your fingers move once gently, then rest again. The sensation returns more quickly this time, less delayed than before. You take that as a sign, small but encouraging. You are holding your balance. Some even found that focusing attention on small repetitive sensations could make long nights more manageable. The feeling of breath, the weight of fabric, the rhythm of distant sounds. These details gave the mind something steady to follow. You do the same. Your awareness settles on your breathing again, then shifts to the faint pressure of the blanket against your shoulder, then to the quiet presence of others nearby. Each sensation anchors you, keeping your thoughts from drifting too far. It keeps you present. A faint crackle from the fire reaches you once more. It is softer now, more intermittent, suggesting that the flames have lowered. You imagine the glow dimmer, but steady, holding its place against the darkness. It has not gone out. That matters. No one could fully agree on how often fires lasted through the coldest part of the night. Some accounts describe careful tending that kept them alive until morning, while others hint that many faded long before dawn, leaving travellers to rely entirely on their own warmth. You consider that quietly, then let it pass. Your body feels heavier now. Not uncomfortable, just settled. The tension that once held your shoulders and arms has eased further, replaced by a calm stillness that feels sustainable. You no longer resist the cold in the same way. You exist alongside it. That changes everything. The wagon creaks softly again, a low, familiar sound that no longer draws your focus. It simply confirms that the structure remains, holding its shape, adapting as needed. You trust it, not completely, but enough. The night continues without interruption. No sudden changes, no sharp movements, only the steady passage of time marked by breath and sound and sensation. You remain within that passage, neither pushing forward nor falling behind, just moving with it. Your eyes close briefly, then open again. The darkness remains the same. The cold remains the same, yet something within you has shifted. You're no longer waiting for the night to end. You're enduring it as it is. And that quiet acceptance carries you further than resistance ever could. You begin to notice your hunger in a quiet, distant way. Not sharp, not urgent, but present like a low signal moving beneath everything else. It does not demand attention, yet it lingers, reminding you that your body is working using what it has stored to keep you steady through the cold. You remain still. That helps. Every movement requires energy, and energy is something you now measure carefully. You do not feel weak, but you feel the need to conserve to avoid anything unnecessary. Your breathing continues its slow rhythm. Inhale, pause, exhale. It feels deeper now, more settled, as if your body has accepted the conditions and adjusted accordingly. The cold is no longer a sharp interruption. It has become a constant background. You exist within it. The blanket holds close around you, shaped by earlier adjustments. The warmth inside remains faint but stable, supported by your position and the presence of others nearby. It is not enough to feel comfortable, but it is enough to endure. That difference matters. A faint sound from outside reaches you again. The horses shift their movement slower now, more spaced out. You hear a soft exhale, then silence again. Their presence feels steady, less active than before, as if they too are conserving energy. You follow that example. Your body remains compact, your limbs close, your posture efficient. You resist the urge to stretch or reposition too often, knowing that each movement disrupts the balance you have built. You hold still. A quiet awareness of your stomach returns. Not discomfort, just a reminder. Those who crossed long distances in cold conditions often learned to manage food carefully, not only to sustain travel, but to support warmth during the night. Eating too little could leave the body without the energy needed to maintain heat, while eating at the right time could provide a subtle but valuable advantage. You feel that connection now. Energy becomes warmth. Warmth becomes endurance. A small movement nearby draws your attention. Someone adjusts their position again, slowly, carefully. The shared warmth shifts slightly, then settles once more. You respond with a minimal adjustment, maintaining your place within the most stable part of the air. It happens without thought. You are used to it now. A faint scent drifts through the wagon. It carries a trace of something familiar, perhaps food from earlier, now softened and distant. It blends with the smell of wool and wood, creating a quiet reminder of the day that has already passed. It feels far away. You breathe it in slowly, then let it fade. The wind outside continues, though. Its sound has softened further, becoming less defined, more like a constant presence than a series of distinct movements. The canvas responds with gentle rustles, no longer sharp enough to draw your focus. You notice the change. The night feels deeper, more settled. A subtle practice among some travelers involved saving small portions of food for the late hours, not to satisfy hunger fully, but to provide a slight boost of energy when the cold felt most persistent. It was a quiet strategy used when needed, not as routine. You consider it briefly, then remain still. Movement would cost more than it gives. Accounts vary when describing how hunger affected travelers during cold nights. Some suggest it faded into the background as the body focused on warmth, while others describe it as a steady reminder of limited resources. You feel it somewhere between those descriptions, present, but not overwhelming. Your body feels balanced, though slightly heavier than before. The stillness has deepened, your muscles relaxed, your breathing steady. You're no longer reacting to the cold, you're maintaining your place within it. That shift feels important. The fire outside crackles faintly again, though the sound is now rare, suggesting that the larger flames have diminished. You imagine a low glow, steady but quiet, holding its place against the night. It continues, even in its reduced state. You hold on to that idea, not as comfort, but as awareness. Your hands remain tucked close, your fingers resting against your arms. You flex them once gently, then allow them to settle again. The warmth there remains consistent, not strong but reliable. You preserve it. The wagon creaks softly once more, a familiar sound that no longer carries uncertainty. It confirms what you already know. The structure holds, it adapts, it continues. You trust it enough. The night stretches forward, though you no longer think about its length in the same way. Time feels less important now, replaced by a steady sequence of sensations that repeat and shift gradually. You remain within that sequence, wrapped in layers, surrounded by quiet presence. balance between energy and stillness. You endure without urgency, without resistance. Simply by continuing, you begin to notice your breath as something you can shape. Not just a rhythm that happens, but something you can guide gently, allowing it to support the small warmth you hold. Each inhale feels deliberate now, each exhale slower, softer, as if you're careful not to let too much heat escape all at once. You remain still, your chin lowers slightly, bringing the edge of the blanket closer to your mouth. The fabric does not touch fully, leaving space to breathe, but it softens the air just enough to make a difference. It feels calmer. Inside the wagon, the air has changed again. Not warmer in any obvious sense, but heavier, shaped by repeated breathing. The space feels closer now, more contained, as if the small pocket around you has settled into a steady state. You notice how the air near your face feels different from the air near the edges. You stay within it, a slow inhale, then a longer exhale. Your breath brushes lightly against the fabric before fading into the space around you. The warmth lingers for a moment, then disappears, replaced by the constant quiet coolness that never fully leaves. You accept that balance. On long journeys across open plains, people often discovered that even minor adjustments to breathing and posture could influence how warmth was retained during cold nights. Covering the lower face loosely, slowing respiration and remaining still were all part of an unspoken practice that developed through experience. You are part of that time. Practice now, not through instruction, but through awareness. A faint movement nearby draws your attention again. Someone exhales more deeply, the sound soft and steady. It blends into the air, joining the shared rhythm that has formed within this small space. You follow it without thinking, your own breathing aligning once more. Hums collective, quiet, sustained. The wind outside continues, though it feels further away now, as if the layers between you and the open land have thickened. The canvas still shifts, but the sound is softer, more distant, no longer pressing against your awareness. You notice the difference. Your mind drifts for a moment, not far, just enough to feel the quiet passage of time without needing to measure it. The night no longer feels like something you must endure moment by moment. It has become something you move through steadily without urgency. A small but telling observation is that many travellers learn to rest without fully sleeping during harsh conditions. They allowed their bodies to settle into stillness while keeping a low level of awareness ready to respond if needed. You feel that state forming, not fully asleep, not fully awake. Somewhere in between, your body feels heavier, now supported by the stillness you have maintained. The tension that once held your muscles has faded, replaced by a quiet ease that does not require effort. It feels natural. A faint crackle from outside reaches you again. The fire remains, though barely. The sound is intermittent now, soft, suggesting embers rather than flame. You imagine a low glow, steady but fragile, holding on to its heat in the open air. It continues. That is enough. There is no single explanation for how long such small fires could endure without tending. Conditions varied and outcomes depended on fuel, wind, and attention. Some lasted through the night, others faded quietly into darkness. You do not dwell on it. Your focus remains inward. Your breathing stays slow, controlled, gentle. The blanket holds its shape around you, maintaining the small environment you have created. The warmth inside remains faint but consistent. You preserve it. A slight shift of your shoulders follows, barely noticeable, just enough to maintain comfort without losing heat. The fabric adjusts, then settles again, holding close. You remain aware. Your fingers move once softly, then rest. The sensation returns quickly, a sign that circulation remains steady. You take note of it, then allow your hands to become still again. No wasted motion. The wagon creaks faintly once more. The sound feels distant now, almost like part of the background rather than something separate. It blends with the wind, the breath, the quiet presence around you. Everything has softened. Your thoughts drift again, not in clear lines, but in gentle patterns that repeat without urgency. You think about warmth, then breath, then the quiet sounds that surround you. Each thought fades into the next without resistance. It feels easier now. You remain where you are, wrapped, contained, balanced within the small space you have shaped through stillness and attention. The cold remains outside, pressing steadily, but it no longer feels overwhelming. You have adapted. The night continues its slow passage, and you continue with it. You begin to notice how time feels different now, not slower, not faster, just stretched in a quiet, even way that no longer asks to be measured. The night has settled into itself, and you have settled within it. There is no clear sense of how long you have been here, only the steady continuation of breath, warmth, and sound. You remain still. Your body has found a balance that holds without effort. The blanket rests close-shaped by the curve of your shoulders and the bend of your legs. The small pocket of warmth around you feels stable, no longer fading as quickly as it did earlier. It holds. A soft exhale from nearby drifts past your ear, then disappears into the shared air. You do not turn toward it. You simply notice it, allowing it to blend into the quiet rhythm that surrounds you. Your breathing follows. Inhale, pause, exhale. The pattern feels deeper now, more settled, as if your body has accepted it fully. There is no strain in it, no urgency, just continuity. Outside, the wind has softened. It still moves across the prairie, but its presence feels less immediate, less pressing. The canvas shifts gently, producing a faint rustle that rises and falls without drawing attention. You recognize it without focusing on it. The night has changed. Or perhaps you have. Those who travelled across open plains often found that their sense of time blurred during long nights, especially when conditions required stillness. Without light or activity to mark the hours, experience became defined by sensation rather than sequence. You feel that now. Time becomes something you move through rather than something you track. Your fingers rest quietly against your arms. You flex them once slowly, then allow them to settle again. The movement feels easier than before, the warmth returning more quickly, the sensation more immediate. It is a small sign, but one that reassures you. You are maintaining. A faint crackle from the fire reaches you again. It is barely there now, just a soft interruption in the steady quiet. You imagine the embers glowing low, their heat diminishing, but not gone. They continue without effort, holding on to what remains. That persistence feels familiar. A subtle practice among some travellers involved allowing their bodies to rest deeply, without fully surrendering to sleep, especially when conditions remained uncertain. It was a way to conserve energy while staying aware enough to respond if needed. You sense that state now. Your thoughts drift more freely, not in clear patterns, but in soft movements that rise and fall without direction. You think of warmth, then of the wagon, then of nothing in particular. Each thought fades before it fully forms. It feels calm. A slight shift nearby draws your attention again. Someone adjusts their position, then becomes still. The shared warmth shifts slightly, then settles again. You respond with a small adjustment of your own, maintaining your place within the most stable part of the space. It happens naturally, no effort. The wagon creaks faintly. The sound blends into the background, no longer distinct, no longer separate. It is simply part of the environment now, like the wind or the breathings around you. Everything then feels as connected. There are moments during journeys like this when the body seems to adapt beyond expectation, finding a steady rhythm even in difficult conditions. Not perfect comfort, but a kind of quiet endurance that allows the night to pass without struggle. You feel that endurance forming. It is not something you force. It is something you allow. Your shoulders relax further, your head lowers slightly, your breathing deepens. The cold remains, but it no longer feels sharp. It has softened into a constant presence, something that exists alongside you rather than pressing against you. You accept it. A faint movement from outside reaches you. A horse shifts, then stillness returns. The sound is brief, almost distant, but it reminds you that the world beyond the wagon continues in its own steady way. You remain where you are, wrapped, contained, balanced. The air inside feels consistent now, shaped by hours of stillness and shared presence. It holds its form without effort, allowing your body to remain calm. You follow that calm, Your eyes close briefly, then open again. The darkness has not changed, yet everything feels different. You're no longer adjusting. You're enduring without thought. The night continues, and you continue with it. You begin to notice the weight of your clothing more than before, not as a burden but as something purposeful. Each layer rests against your skin with quiet intention, holding what little warmth your body produces and keeping it from drifting away too quickly. The fabric no longer feels stiff or foreign. It has softened with time, shaped by your stillness. You remain aware of it. Your shirt, your outer layer, the blanket wrapped around everything. Together they form a system, simple but effective. You sense how each layer traps a thin space of air and how that air becomes part of your warmth. You do not move much. Only small adjustments. A slight pull at the fabric near your shoulder. A gentle shift of your arm to remove a fold that feels too tight. Each change is slow motion, guided by sensation rather than thought. It works. On journeys through colder regions, people often depended more on layering than on any single heavy garment. Instead of one thick piece, they combined multiple lighter layers, allowing pockets of air to form between them, which helped retain heat more effectively. You feel that principle now, not as knowledge, but as experience. Your legs remain drawn inward, your feet tucked close beneath the blanket. The warmth there feels faint but stable, held within the layers you have created. You resist the urge to stretch, knowing that extending your limbs would expose them to cooler air. You remain compact. A soft movement nearby signals another adjustment from someone else inside the wagon. The shared space shifts slightly, then settles again. The warmth redistributes, flowing gently through the small enclosed area. You adjust with it, almost without thinking. The wind outside continues, though its presence feels distant, now more like a steady background than something pressing against you. The canvas moves softly, producing a low rustle that blends with the other sounds of the night. You barely notice it anymore. Your awareness turns inward again. You feel the layers around you, the way they press and hold, the way they create a boundary between your body and the cold beyond. It is not a perfect barrier, but it is enough to slow the loss. And slowing is everything. Some travelers even learn to adjust their clothing during the night, loosening or tightening layers, depending on how the cold shifted. It was not about adding more, but about arranging what was already there in the most effective way. You make a small adjustment now. You shift the blanket slightly higher along your shoulder, reducing a faint draft you had not fully noticed before. The change is immediate though subtle. The air feels more contained. You hold that position. Your breathing remains slow and even. The rhythm has become part of you, steady and quiet, requiring no effort to maintain. Each breath supports the balance you have found, allowing your body to remain calm. A faint crackle from outside reaches you again. It is softer than ever, almost gone, suggesting that the fire has reduced to its final embers. You imagine the glow fading slowly, the warmth diminishing but not yet gone. It will not last much longer. There is still uncertainty about how travelers managed the final hours of the night when external heat sources faded. Some accounts suggest they relied entirely on their own body warmth, while others hint at brief efforts to revive fading fires when possible. You consider that quietly, then let it pass. Your focus remains on what you can control, your layers, your position, your breath. Your hands rest quietly against your arms, fingers relaxed, no longer needing frequent movement. The warmth there feels consistent enough to maintain sensation without effort. You remain aware, but not tense. The wagon creaks faintly once more. The sound feels distant now, almost like part of the background rather than something separate. It confirms what you already know. The structure holds, it continues to adapt. You trust it enough. Your thoughts drift again, not in clear lines, but in soft impressions that come and go without urgency. The cold, the wind, the quiet presence around you. Each one rises briefly then, and fades replaced by the next. It feels calm, your body settles further. The weight of your clothing, once noticeable, now feels natural, almost unremarkable. It has become part of your environment, part of the system that keeps you steady through the night. You remain within it, wrapped, layered, held together by small, deliberate choices that continue to make a difference. The night moves forward, and you move with it. You begin to feel the cold reach its deepest point, not with a sudden drop, but as a quiet arrival. The air inside the wagon seems thinner now, the warmth you've been holding feeling more delicate, as if it could fade more easily if you lose focus. Your breath feels cooler at the edges again, and the small pocket around you requires more attention to maintain. You notice it immediately. This is the hardest part of the night, the hours when the earth has released most of its stored warmth, when the sky above holds nothing back, and when the cold settles fully into every surface, the wagon, the ground, the air, all of it carries the same quiet chill. You remain still. That matters more now than before. Your body holds its position compact and controlled, your limbs tucked close, your shoulders rounded slightly inward. The blanket presses firmly around you, shaped by careful adjustments that now feel essential. You protect the warmth you have. A slow inhale, a longer exhale. Your breathing becomes even more deliberate, as if you are aware of each exchange, each small loss of heat that leaves with every breath. You instinctively keep the opening near your face small, allowing enough air to move, but not more than necessary. It makes a difference. Out on the plains, nights often reach their lowest temperatures in the hours just before dawn, when the absence of sunlight had fully taken its effect. Those who travelled through these regions came to recognize this period as the most demanding when endurance mattered most. You feel that truth now, not as a sudden struggle, but as a quiet increase in effort. Your fingers rest against your arms and you flex them gently once, then again after a short pause. The sensation returns, though more slowly than before. You take note of it, adjusting nothing else, allowing your body to remain as still as possible. Movement must be measured. A faint shift nearby draws your attention. Someone else adjusts their position, perhaps responding to the same subtle change in temperature. The shared warmth shifts again, redistributing itself through the small space. You respond with a minimal movement, maintaining your place within the most stable part. It happens without thought. You are fully adapted now. The wind outside continues, though its sound feels distant, less defined. The canvas moves softly, producing a low, steady rustle that no longer breaks your focus. It blends into everything else. The wagon holds. You feel it beneath you, steady and unchanged, its structure firm despite the cold. It has endured the night alongside you, absorbing the same conditions, responding in quiet ways that no longer surprise you. It has become part of your awareness. A faint crackle from outside reaches you once more. It is barely there now, suggesting that the fire has nearly faded. You imagine only embers remaining, small points of heat that glow softly without flame. Their presence is quiet, almost symbolic. They are still there, but only just. Some nights people tried to revive fading fires in these late hours, though success depended on what fuel remained and how much energy they could spare. Other times they simply allowed the embers to burn out, conserving their strength for the wait until morning. You understand that choice. You remain where you are, your energy stays within you, your breathing remains steady, your posture unchanged. The cold presses gently, not harshly, but persistently. It no longer shocks your senses. It simply exists, surrounding everything equally, asking nothing, offering nothing. You exist within it. Your thoughts move slowly now, not in patterns, not in circles, just soft impressions that come and go without urgency. The effort of thinking feels unnecessary, and you allow it to fade into the background. It feels easier that way. A faint movement from outside reaches you. A horse shifts, then stillness returns. The sound is brief, distant, almost absorbed by the night itself. You register it, then let it pass. Everything continues, quietly, steadily. Your body feels heavy, supported by the stillness you have maintained. The warmth you hold remains fragile, but it persists. You protect it without effort, now guided by instinct rather than thought. You remain within the balance. Cold outside, warmth within, breath steady, movement minimal. The deepest part of the night settles around you, and you hold your place within it. You begin to sense that the night is changing, not through light, not yet, but through something quieter, something that moves beneath the surface of everything you have been feeling. The cold remains, the wagon holds, the wind continues, yet there is a subtle shift that you cannot fully define. You notice it anyway. Your breathing feels steadier now, less deliberate, as if it no longer requires your attention to remain balanced. The small pocket of warmth around you has held through the hardest part, fragile but persistent, shaped by hours of stillness and careful adjustment. It has carried you this far. You remain still. Your body no longer searches for a better position. It has found one that works not perfectly but reliably. The blanket rests where it should, your limbs remain close, and the shared space around you feels stable. There is no urgency. A faint sound reaches you from outside. Not the wind, not the horses, something softer, less defined. It fades before you can follow it, leaving behind only the sense that the world beyond the wagon continues in ways you cannot see. You let it pass. Your awareness drifts again, not into sleep, but into a quieter state where thoughts no longer form clearly. You feel the presence of the night more than you think about it. It surrounds you. The cold feels different now. Still present, still constant, but less sharp than before. Your body has adjusted to it, finding a way to exist alongside it without resistance. The contrast between inside and outside remains, though it feels less dramatic. You've settled into it. Travellers who endured long nights on open ground often spoke of this moment, though not always in the same way. Some described it as a point where the body stopped fighting the cold and began to conserve itself fully. Others hinted at a quiet calm that arrived without warning, carrying them through the final hours before morning. You feel something like that now. Not relief, not comfort, but a quiet steadiness. A slight movement nearby draws your attention. Someone shifts, then becomes still again. The shared warmth adjusts gently, then settles. You respond with a minimal movement of your own, maintaining the balance that has held for so long. It happens without thought. You're fully within the rhythm now. The wagon creaks faintly beneath you. The sound feels distant, almost like an echo of something earlier in the night. It no longer carries meaning. It simply exists, part of the environment you have come to understand. Everything feels softer. The wind outside moves with less force, or perhaps your awareness of it has changed. The canvas still responds, but its movement feels muted, less distinct, blending into the quiet. You barely notice it. A faint memory of warmth passes through your thoughts. The fire, the brief heat against your hands, the soft glow that once pushed back against the darkness. It feels far away now, yet it lingers. There were times when travellers would wake in these final hours and consider rebuilding their fires, though not always successfully. Fuel might be limited, and the effort required could outweigh the benefit. Many chose instead to remain still, trusting that dawn would come soon enough. You understand that choice. You do not move. Your energy remains where it is. Your breathing continues slow and even, no longer something you guide, but something that carries you forward. Each breath feels quieter, softer, as if the night itself has begun to ease. You feel it, a change that is not yet visible. The air seems less heavy, though still cold. The sounds feel more distant, as if the world is preparing for something that has not yet arrived. You wait within it. Your hands rest quietly, your fingers still, your body fully settled into its position. The warmth you hold remains fragile, but it persists steady enough to sustain you through what remains. You trust it now. Not completely, but enough. The night stretches on, yet something within it has shifted, and you remain here balanced between cold and warmth, silence and sound, waiting without effort for what comes next. You begin to notice the first hint of change in the air. Not light, not yet, but a quiet easing, as if the night has reached its fullest depth and can go no further. The cold remains, yet it no longer feels like it is advancing. It simply exists, steady and contained, no longer pressing deeper. You remain still. Your body holds the same position it has kept for hours, no longer searching for adjustment. The blanket rests close, the warmth within it fragile but steady, sustained through patience rather than effort. It has been enough. A slow inhale, a soft exhale. Your breathing continues without thought, carrying you gently through these final moments of the night. The rhythm has become part of you, something that no longer requires attention to remain balanced. You feel the quiet shift. The air inside the wagon seems slightly less dense, though still cold. The shared warmth remains held between you and those nearby, shaped by stillness and time. No one moves. The silence deepens. Then faintly something changes. It is not a sound you can name, not a clear signal, but a subtle difference in the way everything feels. The wind softens further. The air loses a small part of its sharpness. The space around you seems to expand just slightly. You notice it. The night is beginning to loosen its hold. Those who travelled across these open lands often spoke of the moment just before dawn as something felt rather than seen. A shift in the air, a quiet release, a sense that the long stretch of darkness was nearing its end even before light appeared. You feel that now, not as certainty, but as possibility. A faint movement from outside reaches you. The horses stir again, more active than before, their movements slightly quicker, their presence more noticeable. You hear a soft step, then another, followed by a quiet exhale that lingers longer in the air. They feel it too. You remain where you are. Your body does not rush to respond. There is no need. You've endured the hardest part. What remains is not a test of effort, but of patience. The wagon creaks softly beneath you. The sound feels lighter now, less strained, as if the structure itself has settled into the end of the night. The canvas shifts gently, its movement smoother, less urgent. Everything has softened. Your fingers move once more, gently testing sensation. The warmth returns quickly, more easily than before. You notice the difference, small but reassuring. You have held your balance. A quiet breath from nearby follows, then another. The shared space remains steady, though there is a subtle sense of release within it. The tension that once held everything tightly has eased. It feels lighter. You close your eyes briefly, then open them again. The darkness remains, but it no longer feels as deep. There is a sense of space beyond it, something waiting just out of reach. You do not try to find it. You simply remain. Some travellers describe these final moments as the most peaceful, not because the cold had faded, but because the struggle against it had ended. The body, having endured, settled into a quiet acceptance that carried it through the last stretch before morning. You feel that peace now. Now. It is not dramatic, not overwhelming, just a soft calm that replaces the earlier tension. The fire outside has likely faded completely, leaving only the memory of warmth behind. Yet you no longer rely on it. The warmth you hold, small as it is, has been enough to carry you through. You remain wrapped, contained, steady. The sounds around you continue, but they feel different now. The wind no longer presses. The animals move with more ease. The wagon rests without strain. Everything cozy. Everything feels ready. You take another slow breath. And another. Time continues, but it no longer feels heavy. It moves gently now, carrying you towards something you do not need to see to understand. You have endured the night, and now without effort you begin to let it go. Your body remains still, your breath quiet, your awareness softening as the final moments pass. The darkness holds for a little longer, then begins slowly to change. You rest within that change, not moving, not thinking, simply allowing the night to fade. The cold remains, but it no longer defines the moment. It is part of the background now, something that will soon give way to a different kind of air, a different kind of light. You remain where you are, calm, steady, safe. And as the world beyond the wagon prepares to return, you feel your awareness soften further, your breath slow, your body settle into a deeper rest. The night releases you gently, and you drift with it. Now, as everything quiets even further, you allow yourself to rest without holding anything tightly. The sounds fade into distance, the cold softens into something less defined, and the space around you feels wider, lighter, as if it no longer needs your attention. Your breathing slows naturally, each inhale gentle, each exhale longer, softer, carrying away the last traces of effort. You do not need to think anymore. You do not need to adjust. The wagon remains around you steady and quiet, but it no longer feels like something you must rely on. It is simply there, part of the moment, part of the stillness that now surrounds you. Outside, the world is changing, slowly, without urgency. You sense it without needing to see it, the way the air shifts, the way the silence feels different, the way everything seems to open just a little more. It is not something you follow, it is something you allow. Your body grows heavier, not with strain, but with rest. The warmth you have held small and careful becomes less something you guard and more something you drift within. It no longer feels fragile, it feels enough. You let go of the effort. Your shoulders relax fully, your hands remain still, your breath quiet and steady. There is nothing more to manage, nothing more to endure. The long night has passed through you, and you have passed through it. Now there is only stillness, soft, endless, calm, and as the first light begins somewhere beyond your awareness, you rest gently within the fading darkness, carried by the quiet rhythm of breath and warmth. Sleep well.